Southern Comfort, like it in the bottle, you'll love it in the can. Okay, now that's not going to go over well with a Ford Motor Company F-150 built trans tough. I'm not going to like that. Capital One, what's in your man purse? Jim Denny quick grits, just like your birthing person used to make. Walmart, always low prices on puberty blockers. Well, they're not going to let, these are their beloved brands. Wonder Bread, we apologize for our whiteness. Is it? Skittles, you'll taste the rainbow and you'll like it. And Marlboro Reds, come to where the flavor is. Okay,
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into First Reaction TV. My name is J Mart. So those were some woke companies going even more woke. So because of Dylan Mulvaney and the sponsorship with Bud Light, this brings up the topic of transgenders on Bill Maher's show once again. And it was kind of an even-keeled show so far. You know, they go back and forth until they got to the topic of fairness for women and women's rights. And Piers absolutely shuts this person down. Just shuts her down. And I mean, I'll be honest, like, I was rooting for him. I was cheering through the screen. And it was just beautiful to see. Like, I just thank God for Piers Morgan, because I am so sick and tired of these people having constantly trying to say the right thing so they don't offend anyone. Like, just tell the truth for once. Just for once, tell the truth. And it's so satisfying to just see someone be honest. That's it. So it was just glorious to see Piers stand up for the truth. So it's going to be a great show. Please make sure you watch until the end. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like, comment, and I appreciate you watching.
Is there something else to this story? Because apparently this really did have a big backlash on sales of Bud Light. Apparently a lot of America feels like they've had an agenda shoved down their throat on this issue that they feel has real-world consequences for them and their children. Do they have a point?
I don't think so. This is advertising. If you don't like the advertisement, if it doesn't appeal to you, don't buy the product.
But I mean, on the general issue there, do they have any gripe about the idea that when it comes to trans issues, there seems to be no room for debate? I mean, trans people seem just to want to have you have to accept lock, stock, and barrel everything they say, or else you are a bigot and you are shouted down.
Well, yeah.
And, it is new, a lot of this stuff, and we are going in the opposite direction, for example, of Scandinavian countries and the UK, which have pulled back on a lot of this transitioning. So it's not like we are...
So the woman on the show is Representative Katie Porter from California. She is currently running against Adam Schiff in the upcoming Senate race. She is the one that thinks there's not a big issue here.
To the left of everybody.
I think it is a more complicated issue. And I think the issue around Dylan Mulvaney is that until very recently, like a year ago, Dylan Mulvaney was identifying as a gay man and then decided to identify, I think, as non-binary and is now identifying as a woman and talks in these ads about her journey to womanhood and about being a girl and so on. And I didn't really care about the Bud Light ad. Bud Light want to market themselves like that. They'll reap the consequences, good or bad. At the moment, it doesn't look very good, but that's entirely a commercial decision for them. Where it got more complicated, I think, was on the Nike ad that came out at the same time, also featuring Dylan Mulvaney, who was in women's sportswear, including a sports bra, despite not having any breasts, and she's had no surgery. And a lot of women got, I think, and I understand this, they got, I think, pretty exercised and offended by the way that Dylan Mulvaney goes about selling herself on TikTok, himself, theirself. I don't want to use the wrong pronoun, I can respect that. But actually, Dylan Mulvaney, in my view, when I watch these TikToks, is often mocking what a misogynist view of how a woman behaves would be. And you see her, Dylan Mulvaney, talking about, you know, trying on dresses, spending too much money on dresses, crying, telling people they're fine even if they aren't. And a lot of women are like, hang on, this person is mocking us whilst making themselves now the poster girl for womanhood, but remains, for all intents and purposes, a biological male.
Piers Morgan makes a really great point here whenever he brings up Dylan Mulvaney's stereotypical views of what a woman should be. And it's kind of misogynistic, as he puts it, whenever you have a man telling a woman or the rest of women in the world how and what a girl feels when you're a man. Like, this, it just gets crazy. But it is very demeaning whenever you have a man telling a woman that this is what womanhood is.
And it comes at the same time as the whole debate around sport. And we saw this week Riley Gaines, the swimmer, being attacked, literally physically attacked, for trying to stand up for women's rights. So it's not just as simple as somebody saying, hey, I'm now a woman and I'm going to make millions of dollars marketing myself with these big brands, which Dylan Mulvaney is. It is more complicated. And a lot of women are like, hang on a second. What is actually happening to us in this process?
As you can see here from Representative Katie Porter, we are about to be womansplained.
Dylan Mulvaney is free to express herself and to live her gender identity. There's no one right way to be a woman or to drink Bud Light, for that matter, or apparently even to shoot at it. I think the issue that this all gets tangled up in, that it's really important to put on the table, is while the right is waging these kinds of culture attacks, culture wars, trans people are being murdered. So trans people deserve the right to have jobs, to have housing, to get health care, to walk the streets freely. They are being attacked.
But nobody's questioning trans rights to fairness and equality. What I would question, and by the way, I'm not on the right, but what I would question, and I think legitimately, is where trans rights to fairness and equality begin to erode or even destroy, as we're seeing in women's sport, for example, the rights of women to fairness and equality too. And it's that is the problem.
But that, I think,
What are the numbers on how many trans people are being murdered compared to people in other groups?
Funny you should ask that, Bill. With the talk of all this violence towards transgenders, you would think that it's an epidemic out there, that transgenders are just being murdered left and right, picked off one at a time on a daily basis. Here's a report from PBS NewsHour from November 2022. Report says at least 32 transgender people were killed in the U.S. in 2022. It goes on to read, at least 32 transgender and gender non-conforming people have been killed in the United States in 2022. The Human Rights Campaign announced Wednesday in its annual report ahead of the Transgender Day of Remembrance. 2 paragraphs down, it goes on to say the Human Rights Campaign has documented at least 302 violent deaths of transgender and gender non-conforming people since the LGBTQ advocacy organization began tracking such fatalities in 2013. The same year, the FBI began tracking hate crimes against transgender people. So to figure out the average, you take 302 deaths and you divide it between the 9-year period that they began tracking this data, and it comes to about 33 transgenders per year are murdered. So if you take that average on 33 per year murdered, if you divide that between the 331 million people we have populated in the United States, that equals 0.0000001% of the population. Wouldn't say that's really an epidemic.
What are the numbers on how many trans people are being murdered compared to people in other groups?
They're disproportionately likely to be murdered and assaulted and harmed. And so they're one of the groups that suffers highest crime rates, and they are not protected by discrimination. You have people actually egging on acts of violence toward them, toward trans people. So
Wait not to answer the question there, Representative Porter, but keep pushing that narrative.
if Dylan Mulvaney wants to dress up like Holly Golightly or Kid Rock for that matter, I don't care.
Okay, but
I don't think this is mostly about Dylan Mulvaney. I think you guys are off on a tangent here. It's not about that. That's what was my point. I think this would tap the reason why this had such a backlash with the Bud Light drinking crowd, because it tapped into something else. It tapped into, I've seen videos.
Male insecurity, is that what it tapped into?
Oh, it's always about that.
It's not male insecurity.
It's always identity politics.
Right. It's male insecurities. She hit it right on the head here. Unfortunately for her, though, This is Real Time with Bill Maher. This isn't MSNBC, so that narrative isn't going to be driven or forced down anybody.
Now, limitless self-identity, you allow people to abuse the system. And that's exactly what's now been happening. And we see it in sport. Leah Thomas, a 6'4" former biological male swimmer who competed unsuccessfully against men, then transitions to be a woman, says I'm a woman, and destroys women, wins NCAA championships.
And I believe still has a penis.
And still has a penis. And that's the bottom line. And
which helps when you're swimming.
Well,
It's like a rudder, I think.
I don't know.
It is.
I don't know if that does.
I believe aerodynamically I'm
The
on
physiology.
sound right.
So this is Bill just trying to cut the tension in the room because the tension is rising. As you can see here, as Piers continues to explain to her what women's rights are and how important women's rights are, she doesn't seem to be too happy about this conversation. But it doesn't get any better for Representative Porter.
Physiology definitely
Yes,
helps
I
you
know,
beat women in a pool. And we've seen that.
But when you see her in the locker room, it is kind of a ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It looks ridiculous. And the fact that we can't debate these things, I mean, that they just seem so dogmatic about it that if you even bring it up, and, you know, if somebody says, and I've seen, like I was going to say a minute ago, I've seen videos of teachers saying, I tell my kids there is no such thing as a boy or a girl. I can understand why someone out there who is a Trump supporter who says, you know, you're always attacking Donald Trump because he gets rid of norms, and he does, and it's awful. Norms about government and democracy, really fundamental stuff. But this is like norms about life itself. When you start talking about there's no such thing as boys and girls, to a lot of people, it's like, I need a Bud Light. You know, I mean, that's...
Go back to Pierce's point, I mean, we should be able to have a civil discussion about these things. I think, you know, some people have trans people in their lives that they know and they love, and they're concerned about their safety and their well-being. Other people, it's a new or unfamiliar topic, and we should be able to have a civil debate. Nope.
Oh, okay, now we're back to wanting to have a civil debate. Yeah. I guess we're not going to bash male insecurities and blame them for it now, huh?
Nobody, including Riley Gaines, who I disagree with strongly, should feel
What do you
physically...
disagree with, out of interest?
I think that it should be up to sporting bodies to make the decisions about who and
What
how
has she
should
said
compete.
that's actually wrong?
I think that what she has done is try to turn this... We talked about people, you know, using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
That's not what she's doing.
It's not?
I've got no truck for Riley Gaines personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
Well,
She actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up. That cannot be right. It cannot be fair.
That is something that I think our sporting bodies should be dealing with. And by the way, Riley is speaking up for herself, and that is her prerogative, and I respect her free speech.
I think she's speaking up for pretty much every female athlete in the world.
I'm pretty sure she's speaking up for every single female athlete in the world. Thank you, Piers Morgan. Thank you. Like, that's it. It's not male insecurities. It's not a right-wing fascist ideal. It's people trying to stand up and protect people's values, including women's rights, which you should be speaking up for since you are a woman. The fact that she said that Riley Gaines was standing up to Leah Thomas, who basically stole a gold medal from her, a biological man stole a gold medal from her, and she's saying that she's standing up for herself for clicks and views. There's so much here, because even after that, she tried to pull a cop out. I think we should leave it up to sporting events and sporting people in charge of sporting, sporting people. Guess what? Guess who's in charge of that right now? Trying to control that. The entire Biden administration. Pushing their narrative, making it illegal to not let transgender people compete in sporting events. Everyone knows right now what the current presidential administration is trying to do, and they're trying to literally indoctrinate and force women to compete against men against their will.
using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
That's not what she's doing.
It's not?
I've got no truck for Right Against personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
But she has
She actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up. That cannot be right. It cannot be fair.
That is something.
I think she's speaking up for pretty much every female athlete in the world.
I mean, wasn't that the point of Title IX? Title IX in the early 70s was something that was it was a major event in feminism, that we finally have this law that says at colleges, right, and I think high schools too, but definitely colleges, women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports, so that women aren't and this led to the WNBA and lots of other stuff. This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberalism. Liberalism was, let's give the women an equal shot.
And meanwhile,
this is let's put a male in the swimming pool with the women. I don't get it.
It's crazy. And meanwhile, trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and justly.
Well, what's your answer then?
I think there's one or two answers. I think they either compete against their biological sex, as many of them did before, or you create an entirely new category for transgender athletes. And then they're able to compete fairly. But what you cannot do is continue to allow more and more trans athletes to start decimating women's records, in some cases, irrevocably. It's just not fair.
Okay, I got to end it there. Thank you very much, but it's time for new rules.
Oh, hey, by the way, we're going to destroy women's sports. We're going to destroy women's rights. And we're going to blame the men and blame it on men's insecurities whenever you actually have to come up with, like, well, what are the facts for your point of view? Or what's the logic for your point of view? She had nothing else to say. And that says it all. I appreciate you guys watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Comment, let me know what you guys thought of the video. I appreciate all your guys' support. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so please hit that subscribe button.
Fuck Bud Light.